Hi, everyone, and welcome to Inside the Learning Experience, the podcast dedicated to exploring innovative ideas shaping education today. Our goal with this podcast is to deliver direct insights into learning innovation to educators, designers, and institutional leaders, equipping them with the tools and knowledge to enhance their practices and foster greater educational impact. I'm your host, Omid Fotuhi, the Director of Learning Innovation. And today I'm excited to introduce our guest, Tad Farmer, a learning leader, educational strategist, and presenter at WGU Labs. Tad is passionate about using science, research, and technology to develop individual and organizational potential. As a learning experience designer, he is committed to enabling individuals and organizations reach their full potential, viewing learning as a catalyst for change, empowerment, and equality. Tad believes deeply that learning design is an emotional, creative, and social experience, with individuals always being the primary drivers of their own learning journey. Our conversation today will explore designing effective and engaging learning experiences in the age of artificial intelligence, balancing efficiency and quality, and how AI can both enhance access to education and significantly improve learning outcomes. Welcome, Tad. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So, Tad, I've shared a little bit about your bio, but I'm curious if you want to share with the audience some of the your own experiences and expertise, and maybe even some passions that drove you to explore this area of work.
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. Any discussion about my professional journey really has to begin with my K-12 experience. I had some experiences as later in my teen years, early 20s, where I really got some experience teaching, being involved in that education process. And that really led me to major in teaching. And so I graduated with a bachelor's degree in social science teaching. What's kind of interesting about that part of my story, my journey, is when I decided I wanted to be a teacher, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to teach. All I knew that I wanted to teach. And so I considered myself a teacher first teacher, someone who was just passionate about the learning experience, passionate about students, and passionate about the teaching process. And the second question was, okay, I know I want to teach. What subject do I like enough that I would actually be willing to teach? And that's when I decided to do some social studies, specifically geography and history. That contrasts a little bit with other teachers who love history or math, and then they ask themselves, what can I do with that degree? And then they kind of land into teaching. The reason I bring that up is because I think that was really where that human-centered side of my work really began. And so it was very much focused on that student. In this case, I spent 5 years in a middle school classroom, which was a lot of fun, a lot of challenge, a lot of energy. But I had a wonderful experience, and my goal was really just to elevate those students to take those next steps to become the people that they were really designed to be. Um, After teaching for about 5 years, I realized I could only go so much based on my previous knowledge. I really needed to invest in myself and develop my knowledge a little bit more. And so that's where my graduate work really began. So I did both a master's and a PhD in a learning design technology program, where I really dove deep into learning science principles, picked up a ton of skills and knowledge as it relates to human-centered design and how that human design approach really could leverage that educational experience to try to improve, again, the student's experience and ultimately help them to progress along their path to a more fulfilling life, whatever that looked like. And that's kind of where, again, my foundation was created, that educational rooted in the classroom. On top of that, added a little bit of that education, formal training. And now that's what kind of brought me here to WG Labs, where as a senior learning experience designer, I'm really have that opportunity to create those powerful experiences, still with the same original objective to empower people to make change, to improve their lives, and to live more aligned with what their potential allows them to be.
I love that journey, and what strikes me as sort of a values driven investment, because anyone who has the desire and the ability to stay in the classroom as a teacher for as long as you did has to be driven by something that's not externally motivated, right? Like you have to really be driven to that work by your core values and the belief that our role as educators can have a meaningful impact on the students that we serve. And I also find the transition into recognizing that there's greater potential for your role when you apply the learning and the latest science and understanding that you acquired during your education at Purdue. I wonder if that same tension is something that still is at the heart of the work that you're doing. And I'd love to hear from you about some of the projects you're working on, given that you do have that sort of values driven perspective of how it is that students need that support during instruction, but also are now seeing a different kind of enabler, which is technology and AI. So within that, I wonder, what are the projects you're working on? How are you thinking about it? And how does this tension navigate your decisions?
Yeah, I think that word tension is really an interesting one to kind of click on, and really going back for several years, even back to the classroom experience, I felt that tension really keenly because, like you mentioned, to be a classroom teacher, especially in the K-12 setting, it does require kind of an altruistic person to be successful, and I sensed even again in that setting that technology could enable change and improvement. It could support students and engage them in ways that really were an extension of who I was. But I also noticed that there was technology that was being implemented and peddled in that environment that really didn't make a difference, really lacked making that impact. And it seemed to be more in pursuit of outcomes which were motivated by people outside of that altruistic learning environment. And so I really have felt and I've embraced, honestly, the tension, as you put it, between learning and technology, and what that ultimate balance, that optimal balance, really looks like. But to kind of fast forward up into my current work, one of the most significant projects that I've been working on that has really both required me to live in this kind of area of tension, but also provided a lot of opportunities for learning and really positive impact, was dealing with the Learning and Design Alliance and a current project that we're working on. And with this technology, again, taking advantage of the advanced AI models that are available, it essentially allows us, it's a platform that allows us to build learning experiences in a very efficient and effective way using learner analyses, context analyses, source documentation, all these documents and resources that as a designer I would use naturally. I can both create and feed these documents into this platform, and I can use it to help generate content that's aligned to those documents, but also brings in a lot of the learning experiences, role plays, immediate feedback types of interactivities that I really couldn't do very easily with existing tools. So again, this has been a very interesting project, really engaging product. It's fun to see it kind of growing and developing kind of before our eyes. But again, focusing on not only having a technology that's new and novel and fun, but something that's rooted in learning science and that really has a chance to impact the learning and the experience of the students.
Yeah, I'm sort of processing this focus on tension, and I know I've been part of this journey with you on the LDA project, and there's also a history to that tension. I mean, initially, when you see tools that promise a lot but are in early stages, the calculations around the benefits and costs might differ than those same calculations at a later stage, and just trying to figure out how you navigate making those calculations and which investments seem promising around the goals that you have, and making inferences about the ones that don't have that potential. I'm not asking you to answer it, but it's an interesting balance because I have been part of this journey with you. um, I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. Really, what it comes down to in my mind is outcomes. What are the outcomes that are necessary or important to you and to your organization? And I think that there's a lot of outcomes to reach for. As I look at a lot of the AI solutions specifically that are out there, the outcome that really seems to be most interesting to organizations is this outcome on efficiency and productivity. So how can we do things that we currently do faster and with fewer resources? That's an important thing, and I think we can pull on that thread just a little bit. But it's also in my mind, again, even though the educational system has been over the last centuries essentially very industrialized and really built on efficiency, my experiences as a teacher and as a designer also promote this idea of quality and effectiveness. It brings that into the equation. to kind of balance with that outcome of efficiency. So I think it's, as we think about cost benefit and all that, I think we really need to think about what are the outcomes that are most important to our organization, to the learners who are in front of our faces, and what outcomes do we need to start investing in.
What's really interesting again is about this like process of decision making. And from a psychology, there's a really fascinating scenario that's actually used to help understand the concept of morality. And this particular scenario is called the trolley problem. Uh, and what it is you ask people to make a decision about what they would do faced with the following scenario. And the scenario is you are observing a trolley that's on a train track that's headed down the tracks. And within your hand is a lever. If you do nothing, it'll go down the track and it'll kill multiple people. If you do something, it will deviate on its path and go a different direction, but it will kill one person. And what's really fascinating is that, sure, there's like a variance of responses, but the fact that there is still a subsample or a significant number of people who say that they would do nothing actually highlights something really insightful for me, which is that when we're faced with what potentially could be a harmful situation, sometimes our default is not to be an agent in harm, even if the collective harm is less than if we did something. So I've always found that interesting. And as we're talking about navigating tensions and uncertainty, it strikes me as one of those scenarios in which, it's also being mindful of our human tendencies to not want to be part of harm could play out. And within that awareness, recognizing that if you do nothing, sometimes the greater harm isn't exactly doing that. And it feels like you've been navigating these tensions quite a bit, and it's no clear cut way of how to decide. But it sounds like you're thinking about it. But I'm wondering, as you're making these calculations, these decisions, like why does this work matter, especially as some of the projects you're on right now? What's the outcome, as you mentioned? Like, if you're driven by the outcomes, like, what is the potential outcome of doing projects like this?
And I'm rooted really heavily back in my K-12 experience, and the outcome for me really hasn't changed or shifted much from that. What I saw and what I believed at a very young and early in my career was the outcome of education is to be an equalizer. So I am fully aware that the life that I was raised in, the way that I was raised, in a lot of ways was a very privileged life. And there's very few institutions that remain where there really are, at least in my opinion, real levers to raise people out of whatever situations that they're in into a much better way. And so that the outcome again that I'm seeking beginning in my K-12 experience was how can we create learning so that it empowers and enables people to do things that they couldn't have done before, to live lives with skill and knowledge, to be able to have the ability to make decisions and have choices that just their natural growing up may not have provided them those opportunities to have. So it really is this quality, this overall well-being that motivates the work that I'm doing. And as I think about the projects that I'm working on, I may not have the direct impact on individuals and learners like I did in the classroom, but by creating tools and systems and processes that can help empower instructors and designers and those who do have that direct impact and that direct connection, then in some way I'm still having that same that influence on the outcomes of equality and just improving people and improving the overall well-being of individuals. So again, it's a little bit more indirect, but certainly by creating the systems and the process and the tools, it's still pursuing the same outcomes.
Yeah, and I can't help but think of the goal of trying to achieve equality, sometimes being rooted in being able to create customized learning experiences, right? Because not everybody's going to come to the table with the same background, same insights and learning, same styles of or preferences of learning modalities. And as we think about this goal of trying to get greater equity and equality, I'm wondering how these tools that you're seeing have the potential of achieving those. And certainly, as we think about the promise of AI, one of the things is that it can really sort of adapt and adjust to your needs. Are you seeing any of that play out as some of the potential benefits of these projects?
Yeah, I think personalization of learning and adaptive learning, although it's been in process in different forms for a long time, it's certainly the holy grail of education, and technology is now catching up to that dream. On the current project, we are experimenting with some of those, and we're seeing some small victories along the way, and being able to create dynamic content on the fly that's really aligned to the individual learners that are taking the courses and engaging in the content. So we're seeing little victories here and there. But there is, again, we're learning more about artificial intelligence and how we can really harness that ability to create more personalized, dynamic content. Now, there's a lot of work to be done that that still remains. There's a lot of questions and concerns about accreditation and things of that nature too. But there's certainly, we're making great strides, and for the first time, at least from my career and my perspective, that these aspirations towards personalization, um, they seem possible and they seem manageable, and they, in some ways, they almost seem like an inevitable conclusion, which is one that I definitely cheer.
Can you walk me through that journey that you anticipate in front of you, recognizing some of the potential benefits of these tools and systems, but also being mindful of the checks and balances that need to be put into place to do that carefully? What do you imagine the next year will be for the educational landscape as they navigate these balances?
Yeah. So again, I don't pretend to be a futurist and know exactly what's in store. But what I have seen is, we're able to collect a significant amount of data about the learners, not only in the experience in front of them, but potentially throughout the learning program, kind of tracking them through a significant amount of time. And using that data, we're starting to be able to generate, real time dynamic data that's creating learning experiences, interactives, and that are aligned to the things that the platform has learned about the learner. Now, in terms of what the tensions and the conflicts and things that remain, there's a lot of questions about. Again, I mentioned accreditation. How do we make sure that the things that are generated are accurate, how they're aligned, that they are generated in such a way that really can prove and validate a certain level of competency as it relates to that course. As it stands currently, we design a course, it goes through a significant series of steps and processes to validate, and then there's an entire accreditation process that makes sure that that learning is valid and reliable. So that's going to need to flex a little bit, I think, for us to really unlock the total potential of AI. But again, I also just want to mention, bring it back to making sure that it's getting at that those outcomes that are meaningful, that we're not just using the technologies for the sake of using the tool because it's there, it's here, and it's efficient, but it's actually helping us elevate our learners to a higher way of life.
And I've certainly seen you take that sort of empirical approach to discovery. Are you able to share some of the learnings or insights that you've gathered so far as part of this effort?
Yeah, so we've done some early stage testing with this platform that I've described. I describe it more as user testing. So we're currently right now about to launch a pilot where we're really looking at really collecting that empirical evidence about whether or not the learning experience that we're creating with this AI tool, if it's really impacting learning. And we're doing a little A/B, a pre-post design there. But in terms of just the user experience, we've shown this experience that was generated through AI to students, just to get their more experience and their ideas related to that. And by and large, they really love the experience. They saw it to be equal to or greater than the existing content. The things that were really interesting to them and engaging were the AI interactivities that we integrated into the course. So there were a lot of instances where they could practice in more of an authentic way the skills that they were learning in the course. For example, there's an AI job interview assessment where they upload a job posting that they aligns to their interest, and then in a very similar format in the way that we're having this conversation here, they're able to have a conversation with what what is playing the role of a hiring manager for a position that they're interested in. and then following that experience, and they get authentic feedback right away in terms of whatever criteria is built into the platform, whether it's the mode of communication, the way of physically presenting yourself and your dress and your eye contact, and then also the content of the words that you're using to communicate. So again, from these types of interactions, students become very interested in the learning experience, and really are able to practice in the classroom what is oftentimes really difficult, if not impossible, to actually do.
Really exciting stuff. And I know we're just starting to scratch the surface of what's possible, but also being mindful of the potential legitimate considerations around quality and fairness and equity and safety. As you think about your ongoing journey and your role as a learning designer, but also just more broadly as an educator, what recommendations do you have for administrators, educators, advisors as they're navigating this path too?
That's a great question. The first thing I would say is live in the tension. Again, that's going back to something that we talked at the very beginning. Being in this space of tension where there's opportunities but also risks, and we could have a whole series just on those what those risks are. I think that's exactly where you want to live. I've gone to conferences and had a lot of conversations of people who are oftentimes on one side of that tension or the other, that they can either only see the risks and it paralyzes and blinds them to the potential opportunities. And I've also been on the other side in conversations with people who can only see the opportunities and are either blind to the risks, or they don't put any weight or any value in those risks. I think either one of those extremes is actually a very dangerous position to be in. Like it is with all technology, we've seen positives and negatives with the development of internet, which was a significant shift in education. Social media, I think we're seeing a lot of the negative risks that are coming out as well. So the same kind of thing we should expect to see with AI. And so I think we really need to live in the tension. The other thing that I would say is, again, kind of consider what are the outcomes that you're seeking. Again, kind of a repeated theme in this conversation. What is it that you're trying to do with AI, or with any other technology for that matter? And how are the tools enabling or hindering the achievement of those outcomes? One of the things that I'm really excited about, as we think about the future, is, how can a tool that's so mechanical and even cold sometimes, like AI, how can that actually be used to leverage more human to human connection? And a couple of examples that I want to just share. One is actually from a university. They haven't published it yet, but from Purdue University here, local to me. And what they did is they introduced this AI-driven pre-assessment of student writing. And so students who were having a hard time with their writing, before they go and engage with a consultant, a human consultant at the writing center, they would actually put their paper in this little pre-assessment AI powered thing, and they'd get some feedback there. But it's very easy, I think, to just build a bot that would do that assessment and give the students instruction and the correction that they need, and then they can move on. I think we're seeing a lot of those bots already, and we're actually trying to build some of those bots too. But what was really interesting is they actually use the AI agent to actually pass that information on to a human writing consultant. And so that when the students walked into the writing center, then they walked in with a clear idea of the questions that they needed to ask to help them to improve. And so rather than replacing the consultant altogether, which again, a lot of AI products out there are promising to do, what they're doing is they're using AI to really target and identify what students can and can't do. And so when the students got to those conversations, they were more focused, they were more productive than they were before the AI experience. So that's what I'm really interested in seeing is how do we use AI and outcome to kind of make more human to human connection, not as a replacement so much, but as a supplement or a complement to what we're doing.
Well, Ted, you've actually already answered my last question, and you've been very generous with your thoughts and your time. And so I wanted to thank you for joining us. I also wanted to thank the audience for tuning in and joining us on the Inside the Learning Experience. We hope that today's insights were able to inspire you and help you figure out how you navigate some of the tensions within this time and space. Be sure to stay tuned on our next episodes, where we continue to dive into some of these groundbreaking ideas where we hope to transform the learning landscape. So thank you, and see you soon.
Thank you.